Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our first official episode of Observation Conversations. My name is Reid.
And I am Jonathan Goodisnor.
And we're just a couple of friends talking about movies, games, and whatever. Today we're going to be talking about, it's kind of a small show, kind of indie. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's called WandaVision on Disney Plus, as well as Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Both of those shows came out, and they've been huge implications, just very entertaining. I think we should just jump right into WandaVision.
Absolutely. I think what we wanted to kind of do with this episode is figure out, this is Marvel Studios' first formal foray into the TV world, into the streaming world. And this was their big 1-2 punch to kick things off. And just to kind of take a look at both of them and see how well they did. But before we start, I just wanted to ask you, because I think we've both known this about one another for a long time, but I don't know if we've ever actually talked about it. Would it be fair to say that we're both big fans of Marvel Studios and the MCU?
I'd say that's fair, yeah.
Absolutely, and I know I'm a big fan of it. I know we talk about it a lot, but I don't know that we've ever actually said it out loud. So I'm very excited for this conversation.
Yeah, I consider myself a big fan. I've seen every MCU movie aside from Thor: The Dark World, just because it wasn't really worth watching in my mind. Wasn't that notable, but yeah, I mean, even after Endgame, a lot of people were like, yeah, that's the end of an era, gonna stop watching. And I'm like, no, keep it coming. I wanna see what they do.
Absolutely. And likewise, those are the only two Marvel movies that I haven't seen are the first Thor film and the second Thor film. So
yeah,
I'm in the same boat. But yeah, I've seen everything else. Huge fan of that universe, and I mean, I'll just show my cards here. I mean, I love what Marvel Studios has done now with these two shows, and I'm very excited for what's coming up next. I think WandaVision was a home run, and I really liked Falcon Winter Soldier too. So
yeah,
I guess let's kick off with the show that kicked off the entirety of Phase 4 of the MCU, WandaVision.
It was actually a very interesting choice for their first show, given how experimental it was. It was not at all a safe choice. I think it was a high risk, high reward, and they like you said, they hit it out of the park. They nailed it.
Oh, absolutely. And the thing is that it wasn't even supposed to be the first Disney Plus show to come out. Falcon and the Winter Soldier was supposed to be the first Disney Plus show to come out, but they had to push it back due to reshoots. And so WandaVision was kind of the accidental, first show out of the gate. And honestly, thank goodness it was, because I think that this was kind of the optimal way to do this. If you're right, WandaVision was very kind of experimental by MCU standards, but they executed it so well that when we did get the Falcon Winter Soldier, which was more conventional by comparison, it felt like almost a return to form. And so you had the great experimental thing, and then you had the more conventional thing that was also very good. And the conventional thing felt like almost a breath of fresh air coming off of the experimental thing. So I think this was a near best case scenario. And so WandaVision, so when we first pick up with WandaVision, if you were not particularly familiar with these characters or previous goings on with the MCU, you would be pretty confused by the first few episodes of the show. And even if you are familiar with it, I mean,
I was confused through the first 3 episodes. I think most people were.
Yeah, and I think that was the point. And when we first go into the show, you're not really given a big amount of context, or really any context. The show opens and you're already in this 1950s I Love Lucy, Dick Van Dyke show type facsimile, but it's starring two Avengers, and you're not exactly sure why any of this is happening or what they're doing here. And I I really appreciated that. Honestly, I appreciated not knowing exactly what was going on at first. I think that I know that it's been said pretty widely, and let me know if you agree with this, that the first three episodes were a little bit slower. It was
Yeah.
kind of world building, setting things up, and that's true. I mean, they things do pick up a lot more towards the end of the show, but I appreciated just how faithfully they recreated the look and the feel of those old shows from the 50s and 60s and 70s in those first three episodes. And you really get a lot more appreciation for it when you watch the making of documentary that they
Yeah,
released
the
after.
assembled.
Yeah, the assembled that came out after WandaVision, because they show you the immense lengths they went to be as faithful as possible to the way that they would have produced sitcoms in the 50s and 60s. And that attention to detail really comes through in the final product. I thought that I really did kind of have fun with some of the 50s and 60s humor that they used, and it was a little more innocent, a little more lighthearted, and a little more slapstick. But I thought it was charming, because
Yeah.
that has kind of gone out of style now, and so it feels a little, it adds that extra layer of, I guess, realism to what they were trying to portray with the 50s and 60s and 70s aesthetic. And yeah, I thought it was really charming. I loved the dinner with Mr. Hart. I thought that was really fun. And
That
Wanda trying to
was
keep her powers a secret.
yeah, that the whole anti I mean I guess it wasn't until the second episode. I don't really remember the full timeline, but they were kind of doing that was it Sabrina the Teenage Witch or something? But there
Mm.
was I don't know, there used to be an old sitcom that had to do with like magic powers, and they had like props on like fishing line that are
Oh,
floating up and down, and
Bewitched.
yeah, Bewitched, yeah. And they use those same techniques, so it wasn't the funny thing is it's like we got to see Wanda's powers in the movies,
Mm-hmm.
and then all of a sudden like this new thing is happening and these aren't her same powers.
Mm-hmm.
We understand that they're coming from her, but um it's it's almost like you have this kind of sitcom filter over it,
Mm-hmm.
which is exactly what was happening, and I think they pulled it off so well.
Oh, absolutely.
um that kind of lighthearted, cartoonish. I mean, they literally had like some animated pieces for the intros, and
Absolutely. I
also
mean,
perfectly stylized.
absolutely. I mean, you look at the fantastic magic show from episode two, and that was kind of getting into more so of the 60s sitcoms with Bewitched and shows like that.
Yeah,
That was,
yeah.
I loved the magic show from episode two. I thought that was so much fun. And that was also when we started to get a little bit more of the mystery unraveling as well. You had the colored in helicopter from the beginning of the episode. You had Dottie breaking, cutting herself on the glass when she breaks it. And of course the beekeeper at the end of the episode,
Mm.
where Wanda says no and pushes the decade forward into the 70s. Um, I really loved it. I mean, yeah, the episode one and episode two, despite telling us nothing, I thought they were so charming and so faithful to their eras. Uh, I loved it. I loved it despite not knowing, having a clue what was going on. I just respected them for what they were doing and how weird it was and how intriguing it was as well. Because even though it's lighthearted and kind of 50s sitcom funny type of thing, that something isn't right here. Like, this isn't supposed to be happening. And you can tell as time goes on that there is a much deeper and darker mystery that's unraveling just beneath the surface of this show. And you get that, I think, even from the beginning. I mean, even episode one, when Mr. Hart is choking on his food and Vision has to
That,
use his powers
yeah.
to save him. And when it transitions from the sitcom aspect ratio to the cinematic aspect ratio,
Yes, I
I
love
thought that
that.
was handled so
That
well.
was, yeah. that was such a, it's a very subtle detail, because sometimes they would even do that. I remember there's one episode where I think it was actually toward the end of the show where Wanda technically leaves the hex because she's entering Agatha's basement in that room with the runes, and you can see that the aspect ratio just kind of shifts on screen. Like that, those instances there was a little bit more noticeable, but sometimes it would just like, they'd cut from the black and white to like, what's happening outside, and through this instantaneous cut, the aspect ratio changed, and you just, you don't notice it like a first time watching through. It was really cool.
It was brilliant. I mean, I could not imagine a better way to depict that transition from the television world to the real world outside than manipulating the aspect ratio, because that aspect ratio has become so synonymous with the movies that you can instantly tell when we've moved from one to the other, when we move from the television full screen to the cinematic widescreen. So I couldn't agree more. That was really fantastic.
It's almost like it's kind of like a meta detail in a way, because if you think about, a lot of people are expecting the MCU to branch off into the multiverse, and if you think about it, you have the MCU, which is the Marvel Cinematic Universe, so it's its own universe, and if you think of that as part of the multiverse within Marvel's IP, her shifting the aspect ratio and calling attention to the fact that this is a video medium means that she's almost controlling the MCU universe itself, and is controlling the very fabric of that reality, which is just the video files,
Absolutely.
and the aspect ratio. It's just that credits to her being like a Nexus being, and all of those implications.
Absolutely. And so, you take those standout first two episodes, and then you go into episode 3. And for me, I think episode 3 may have been the weakest of the series. I still liked it, but I wasn't that invested in the whole 70s Brady Bunch thing. It was a little bit, just like the decade it's based in. It was the whole thing was a little bit tacky. It was a little, that one I think was one where it almost felt more out of date than the 50s and 60s that preceded it. I get what they were doing. It was Brady Bunch, and it was very silly, and there was a lot of practical props, and the sprinklers are going off, and the paintings are spinning on the walls, and all that stuff it was fun, and I can appreciate what they were doing. But I didn't really. I liked it, but I think it was probably one of the weaker, if not the weakest episode of the season for me.
Yeah. I definitely agree with that.
And so then we go from there into episode 4, and this is when
the context episode.
Yeah, exactly. This is where we kind of zoom out.
And expose.
Exactly, and we kind of see everything that's been happening outside, and we get, as you said, context for everything. And it was great. I mean, it was great, not only because it filled us in on what's actually going on, but also there were some great standout moments. Like, I think it's going to be very difficult to top a depiction of the blip than what we got in episode 4 when Monica Rambeau returns into this hospital whose population is now doubled in size, because that's what it really would be like. We've seen it once before briefly in Spider-Man Far From Home, when the high school marching band flips back into existence. And that was funny.
In the middle of a basketball game. Yeah.
Yeah, in the middle of a basketball game, which was funny and cool. But I mean, that
also, as a brief tangent, that begs the question: if they're just appearing where they left off, did people in airplanes just kind of appear in the sky?
Yeah,
they don't answer that. It still bugs.
That's the question that everybody asks, and I think that My guess, and I don't know if the screenwriters from Endgame have commented on this, maybe they have. My guess is if they haven't clarified it yet, they might throw it in as some little line in a future movie or series that when Smart Hulk did his snap, he made it so everyone would not only return but return safely. So if
Yeah,
you were in
yeah,
a situation that
yeah.
would imperil you when you came back, you would just, you would come back on the ground or wherever. If I had to guess, I don't know. The screenwriters may have already clarified that, but it goes to show you that even if everyone does return technically safely, it would be chaos, just like we saw in Episode 4. And I think that was a really, really cool way to do it. Not only to introduce us to this character, but of Monica Rambeau, but also to give us a little bit more of what that moment would have been like. I mean, it would be pandemonium, especially in a place like a hospital. It would be
Yeah.
utter chaos.
And I think it's actually, it's really interesting that, Falcon and the Winter Soldier, which we'll talk about a little later, that was originally gonna be first.
Yeah.
But given the whole plot line with the you know repatriation council or
Mm.
whatever it was that they're you know relocating all these people that just blipped back,
Hmm.
seeing that hospital scene with Rambeau is kind of great context for the Flag Smashers dilemma in Falcon and the Winter Soldier.
It's
And it's
true.
kind of
Yeah.
an unintentional consequence, but I think it was really neat how that kind of worked itself out.
Absolutely, absolutely. And so, yeah, so in Episode 4, we get everything we've been missing. We get introduced to Monica Rambeau. We get introduced to Sword, Taylor Hayward, uh, the Sword director that everybody loves to hate, not for bad reasons, for actually quite good reasons by the end. Um, and yeah, we get introduced to the notion of the hex, which I mean, again, that was, I think, a great, great way to introduce this concept into the world because it's so simple.
Yeah.
She was so upset and dissatisfied with her reality. She's lost everyone she's ever loved, and she was in such distress that well, we don't know this yet, but as we learn later, she literally just created her own pocket reality, a giant bubble that has encompassed this New Jersey town, which, by the way, that was pretty cool. We're both from New Jersey, so that was nice to get some representation of our
Yeah.
home area in the MCU. And she just turned it into her ideal world. So I thought that was another really just cool way to do it because that's a very accessible way to communicate that idea.
Yeah, like just some of the details about Episode 4. I know Marvel has a lot of like, they go off on their pseudoscience bull a lot,
Mm-hmm.
but I did really enjoy their explanation for the hex.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea that, this, cosmic radiation is, the same wavelength as a TV signal. Um,
Yeah,
and that, Darcy was able to pick that up and like transmit it. It just, it's pseudoscience. It doesn't really make sense, but
but it kind of
it's
works.
nice to think that they did put thought into it and they justified the hex's existence. In a world
Absolutely.
with magic, um, this thing still exists, and I don't know. I just thought that was kind of a neat little touch, and I appreciate that.
Oh, totally. No, I agree completely. I agree completely. I think it was a really, really good way to do it. And so that was pretty much what we got out of Episode 4. It was, as you said, it was kind of the context episode, kind of
Yeah,
establishing what's going on the outside. And then we go to Episode 5, which is the '80s episode. And I loved this. This was a great episode just on its own, but also I love, speaking of kind of the meta elements of it. This is kind of based on shows like Family Ties and Full House and all those '80s sitcoms, and it's so delightfully meta because, of course, Elizabeth Olsen's sisters, Mary Kate and Ashley,
yeah,
starred on Full House, and so now she's doing a Full House inspired sitcom episode on WandaVision.
yeah. She
Um,
proved that she could hold her own too.
oh, absolutely, she was fantastic, and this was a great episode. We get introduced to the boys, Billy and Tommy. Their rapid aging problem. Um, and yeah, and this is also the first time when Vision starts to really piece together something isn't correct here. He's at his office, an office where he can't quite deduce what his company actually produce or does.
Yeah.
And it's because Wanda never filled in that part of the backstory. So he's just at a company that works on something all day.
He's
And
a business professional. He worked at the business doing
exactly.
business things.
And they receive a message from the outside from Sword. And this leads to two very important consequences. Of course, this is the first time we see Wanda leave the Hex to confront Hayward and the rest of Sword. And that was a very cool scene as well, where she gets all the Sword agents to point their guns at
Oh my
Hayward.
God, yeah.
That was really cool. And of course, Vision actually confronts Wanda about what is going on with Westview. And he asks, and this is one of my favorite moments of the show, when he asks, why aren't there any other children in Westview? Because that causes you to think back and you realize, wait a minute, Billy and Tommy are the first children or adolescents we have yet to see in this show. This is supposedly a very standard suburban town, and yet it's composed only of adults. Even though we know these adults have a particular preoccupation with children, because as in episode 2, they reminded us several times, the whole talent show was to raise money for the children.
For the children, yeah.
Exactly. And so, and also I love how Wanda tries to just cut off the argument by rolling the credits on the show, because that's what would actually happen on a sitcom. But of course that doesn't work. Vision keeps pressing on the subject, and it seems like they're almost about to come to blows when they get that mysterious knock on the door, and it appears at first glance to be Quicksilver from the Fox X-Men films.
When I saw that, I watched the show with my girlfriend, and we both joked like, "Oh, is she gonna bring Quicksilver back?" And then like, because there was a first knock on the door, and we were like, "Is it Quicksilver?" And then it ended up being Agatha.
That's true.
When she was still in her neighbor form. And then at the very end of the episode, there's a second knock, and we like both look at each other, and the door opens, and it's was it Evan Peters?
Yeah, Evan Peters.
Evan Peters Quicksilver. We just stare at each other, and we're like, ah! We just screamed.
Oh, it was so awesome because in that moment, it was entirely fair to assume this might actually be not only the beginning of the MCU multiverse, but of a greater Marvel multiverse where characters from previous Marvel properties from other studios, like Fox and their X-Men properties, could now be coming into the MCU. It was shocking how big that reveal seemed to be at first. And we'll get to more of what that actually ended up being later on. But that was a truly astounding reveal. I was blown away by that, and that was the capstone to already a very strong episode. And then we go into the next episode, the Halloween episode, all new Halloween Spooktacular, which was kind of
given that Vision was like, "Where are all the children?" And then the very next episode, there's like children everywhere.
Exactly. Yeah. Now, you could see in real time Wanda filling in the gaps of this invented reality, and this was kind of the '90s episode, the Malcolm in the Middle episode, and once again, I mean, it was fantastic. It was. Now Vision is fully out and about looking for answers. He wants to figure out what's going on with this. It was really cool to see Evan Peters, presumably as Pietro, as Quicksilver, zooming around and going around with the kids and all that, and just another great standout episode. We all love a good Halloween episode, and yeah, I think they captured that kind of late '90s, early 2000s thing pretty well. And of course, at the end of this episode, Vision attempts to leave the Hex, and I'm not entirely sure how he even gets as far as he did, because he gets a little bit outside of the Hex, but since he's a manifestation purely of the Hex, presumably once he left it, he would just cease to exist immediately.
Yeah, it's a little the way I see it, it was, because Wanda's powers are kind of explained at the end that she's able to just create physical matter.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't. I don't know if you've seen or heard of uh Full Metal Alchemist, but there's this classic line that about equivalent exchange, where like the matter in has to equal the matter out, and she can just kind of ignore that rule. And I think that's why he was able to leave for a brief second, because it's not like he was just created matter. He just existed out of nothing. I don't know. It's not really explained. It was definitely a painful moment to watch, though.
Oh yeah,
literally disintegrate in front of you after he had already died in Infinity War.
Yeah, no, it didn't bother me much. I just kind of wondered that. Also, another great little detail of this episode: Agnes, the nosy neighbor, is of course her Halloween costume is as a witch.
Yeah,
which is another great little another great little note. And of course, in her brief interaction with Vision on the far outskirts of town, she asks him, am I dead? And he says, well, no, of course not. Why would you think that? Well, because you are. Demonstrating that, of course, that shows us, we already had a pretty good sense. Agnes knows a lot more than she's letting on. But by demonstrating that she has a knowledge of who Vision was outside, that tells us, Agnes is absolutely not just another one of the people trapped in this town. She is someone else. And we get more on her later on. But Vision attempts to leave the hex, begins to disintegrate. I believe it's Billy is the one with the super speed, or is it Tommy? I forget.
I don't know.
But one of them, the one with the telepathy, senses that Vision's in trouble, and Wanda expands the hex to such a radius that it encompasses the entire sword perimeter established outside.
Yeah.
Turning it into a circus full of clowns, which again is another great little detail, because of course that's how Wanda sees them. Also, just to say this about Sword, because we haven't really touched on them much. Seeing Agent Woo again from Ant-Man and the Wasp, that was really
Jimmy
great.
Woo.
Yeah, we love Jimmy Woo.
It was so
it was so cool to see him again.
He's so fun.
I love that
little detail where he like palms his own business card. Really, like he picked up that magic trick from Scott Lang in it.
Yeah, he's still practicing his close-up magic, which I loved. And also Darcy. We saw Darcy for the first time since Thor 2, which was neat. I do wonder when she'll pop up again. I feel like we'll probably see her again sooner rather than later. But it was cool that we brought both of them back. Also, before we forget about Monica, she makes it into the hex and is after she gives herself up, essentially she gets violently expulsed from the hex. I really that might have actually been my favorite moment of episode 3, where she is smashed through 7 different walls and 3 different houses and across a massive field out of the hex. That and also, of course, we get a brief glimpse of dead Vision at the end of episode 3. Those were 2 standout moments. Yes, so that was essentially the end of the Halloween episode. And then next we had the 2000s episode, kind of the Modern Family episode. And that was just that seemed like that was just kind of it was setting up the finale essentially.
Yeah.
Wanda has expanded the hex and kind of the consequences of that. Things are really going haywire now, because now she has to process double the things that she had to deal with before. Yes, she goes into Agnes's basement, pardon me, where she reveals herself to not be Agnes, but Agatha Harkness.
Yep.
The infamous witch from the Marvel comics. And that leads us to the final two episodes. And previously on, the second to last episode was really great because that was filling us in on everything that essentially makes Wanda Wanda. Her whole backstory. I didn't really care for the whole Salem 16893 thing. That was a little confusing. I understand why we needed it, because we need to establish who Agatha is and that she's a witch and this is where she comes from and all that. I was a little confused watching that, but it makes more sense in the season finale. And then, but yeah, just seeing where Wanda comes from, getting more of her in Sokovia, and her time with uh, uh,
Her family and Pietro and
not only her family but also with Hydra. Sorry about that. I was blanking on Hydra.
Oh,
And
yeah.
With the Mind Stone and all that, and and of course, we see what actually happened when she went to Sword. Hayward led us to believe that she had stolen Vision's body. Of course, that wasn't actually the case. She went to go see Vision's body. She didn't take it with her.
And he kind of forced her into this grief-driven hysteria. Like, that was
exactly.
His fault, which is interesting.
Exactly. And also, this was just I found this kind of fun. When she's leaving the Sword headquarters, I love the idea that an Avenger who can fly just drives a Honda. Like I really appreciated that. Like
I
she
mean,
just like,
it's those brand deals. They gotta work it in somehow.
yeah, but I really got a kick out of that. Of course she just drives a normal car. It's like,
it was a red Honda.
Mm. Oh, there you go. It's a good point.
Extra little detail.
Yeah, there you go. And and getting all of that. And that brought us to our season finale where she faces off with Agatha and Vision faces off with his I don't know if he's even a strictly
Vision.
exactly. I don't know if he's even a strictly an evil Vision. He's just a soulless Vision. He's just a straight up robot.
I'd say he's evil because he's white, so like,
well, I mean, it's I think I don't think he's evil. I think he just takes orders. I think he's just a robot in the truest sense. And so Wanda fights Agatha, Vision fights White Vision. Quicksilver is revealed to not actually be Quicksilver, is revealed to be an actor named Ralph Boner.
Not even an actor, just some kid.
Well, yeah. Well, an aspiring actor in Westview. And yeah, that felt like perhaps a needlessly.
That's like the Mandarin all over again.
Yeah. That felt like kind of like a needlessly cruel thing to do, because the Marvel fans have been theorizing for weeks about what's going on. Like that's just what happens. So, look, I'm not saying if you're going to cast Evan Peters, he strictly has to be the Fox X-Men Quicksilver, but I mean, like, at least don't name the guy Boner. Like that just felt like a little mean, because our imaginations run wild with, oh, what does this mean? What does that mean? But yeah, he turns out to not be anyone in particular. So, well, we may have to wait a little while longer to get the Fox X-Men, if ever. Honestly, I truly think the only member of the Fox X-Men that's going to cross over is Deadpool. I think that's it. We're going to get Deadpool, and then the rest of them are going to be gone.
Well, I think they'll bring the characters back, but I think all of them are going to be recast.
Yeah, exactly.
Which, honestly, I think makes the most sense.
Yeah, no, I mean, you don't want to, that's only going to confuse people if you bring the old X-Men back, but they're not the same X-Men. They're different X-Men, but they're the same people. Yeah, that's not going to work. So it's going to be new versions of the characters.
But it's a little ironic because, given the rumors of No Way Home, they're bringing the kind of old Spider-Man villains back. So
yeah,
I don't know. We'll see how it plays out, I guess.
Yeah, well, I mean, if they really want to go in the, the full multiverse direction, I mean, of course, it would be great to see Hugh Jackman back, and people like that. But I don't know if we're going to see Patrick Stewart again as Professor X. I don't know. I don't know that we're going to see Ian McKellen back as Magneto. It seems like, everybody loves Hugh Jackman, but beyond that, well, they'll probably want to.
I want to see other people give it a shot too.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
that was one of the benefits of having multiple Spider-Man is that, each actor kind of brings a new performance and a new style to that character. Like
Exactly.
we had the Raimi-verse Spider-Man, we had Andrew Garfield, and now we have Tom Holland, and it's nice kind of seeing each of like them make the character their own in a way.
Oh, absolutely.
And we've had Hugh Jackman Wolverine forever, and
Mm.
he's a great actor and he performs the role super well.
Mhm.
But I want to see what someone else can do.
Of course, no, I agree with you. It's time to get a new group of people in, and I think that's what they're going to do. But yes, so when finally they have their big final showdown. Also, in the episode 7, in the Modern Family episode, Monica breaks through the hex. She gets her powers, so she's going to be Photon now, and that's going to be
Yep.
cool. We're probably going to see her again, maybe in Miss Marvel, but certainly in the Marvels coming out next year. So I'm excited to see her again. I think that's a really cool character. So excited to see where she goes. But yes, suffice it to say, Vision defeats White Vision with a with a parable, which I think was really great. Of course, the great Ship of Theseus moment that everybody loves. Um, and ultimately, Wanda defeats Agatha using runes, which Agatha originally used on her at the end of episode 7. She ruined her hex so that Agatha could no longer perform any of her magic.
Yeah.
And yeah, that was the end of that. It definitely the finale felt like the most Marvel of WandaVision. And I mean, I get it. I mean, we have to kind of bring this whole thing into into its conclusion here. I felt like we could have spent a little bit more time. I think the show might have benefited from an episode 10. I feel like the finale was a little bit rushed. It felt very action heavy compared to what came before, and I understand why. But I would have liked to have had a little bit more time because after all these big climactic fights, Agatha is defeated. Wanda essentially turns her back into Agnes, the Agnes character, until until she needs her again, I guess, or wants to talk to her again. But also, we have to essentially end the hex. We have to collapse the hex. Oh, also, another thing, Sword, Sword comes in, Hayward comes in, um, shoots at Billy and Tommy. That's a
Shoots
no
at
go.
children.
Yeah, he shoots at
He
children.
takes the
So
gun and he's
demonstrating.
like, F them kids. I'm gonna shoot them. And it's just like, oh my god.
Yeah, exactly. And so that was So Hayward officially became like he went from being a bad guy to like a mustache twirling villain at that point.
Yeah.
Which
Marvel has kind of a mixed track record. I think everyone always prefers the likable
mm,
villains that like have a point.
exactly.
And Hayward was just not that. They're like, how do we make this guy as unlikable as possible? Let's
Exactly.
give him a gun and have him point it at children.
Exactly. I mean, you look at the best, one of the best Marvel villains that we've had. Typically, most people's top 3 is Loki, Killmonger, and Thanos, and those
Yeah.
are the 3 that have they've always had a point. They haven't been the archetypal mustache twirling villain. And they haven't just been a dark reflection of the hero. They were misguided, and they did bad things on the way, but you could see where they were coming from.
Yeah.
And that's not what we got with Hayward, but that is the best Marvel villains have all more or less followed that formula. um and so so the hex has to be destroyed. We say goodbye to the television version of Westview. Billy and Tommy cease to exist. Vision tragically ceases to exist once again. Wanda,
I mean, White Vision is out there.
yeah, well, he's out there somewhere. We God knows when we'll see him again. But yes, Wanda has lost everything again. But she does have Agatha's Darkhold, and she goes away.
That
And
post-credits scene
well,
where
there's two.
she's
Yeah.
yeah, but when she's in the cabin and she's awake, what is also simultaneously astral projecting, which is a little unheard of.
Oh yeah.
And just it's. Do you think Wanda is going to end up a villain?
Oh, I absolutely do. I believe that Scarlet Witch will be the primary antagonist of Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. Absolutely, 100%.
Do you think she'll be redeemed by the end of that and become a hero?
Probably. I think Scarlet Witch will be the primary antagonist of Doctor Strange too, but I don't think she will be. I think there will be an out in that she wasn't entirely in control of herself in the events of that film. So that by the end of it, she hasn't done so much damage that she can't be redeemed. I think she will be redeemed by the end of it. I think you're gonna have a situation where she is just so driven and distraught by grief that she has essentially going through all these different universes, smashing all these different universes together to find a version of reality where her children still exist. I think that's what she's going to do. And that's going to be the multiverse of madness. She's just going to be wreaking such havoc with reality and with the multiverse, trying to find her kids, that it's going to create this multiverse crisis that we're going to see in Doctor Strange 2. That's what I think.
I like that. I like that. Because originally, the rumors about Doctor Strange 2 Multiverse of Madness was he was going to fight. I think the comic
Nightmare.
villain was literally just called Nightmare. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if they're still going to do that. It sounds like Doctor Strange 2 is kind of turning into another, like, unofficial Avengers film, like Captain America Civil War.
Definitely. Yeah, yeah, that's my theory as well. I think that the version of Doctor Strange 2 we're getting now is very different than what was originally announced back in 2019. I think the scope has got a lot bigger as things have progressed and as things have been reshuffled from what they're originally going to do, from a strictly Doctor Strange sequel to, as you said, an Avengers level film in all but name.
Yeah, which is it's both good and bad. I think it'll be really, really cool to kind of see that team up film and see kind of more grounded characters dealing with cosmic problems. Because it's just kind of always interesting seeing those two parallels clash.
Yeah.
But I was really excited to hear about a Marvel horror film, which was what the Doctor Strange 2 was originally going to be. That excited me so much, and I don't think that's going to happen now, unless they save it for like a Doctor Strange 3. But
yeah, I agree with you. That would have been really fascinating to see, and I think that's probably why Scott Derrickson left, is because that's what he wanted to do, and Marvel was saying no, we want to go in a different direction, and they, I'm thrilled they have Sam Raimi on to replace him, but I think if I had to guess, that's probably what Scott Derrickson wanted to do. Marvel wanted to go in this other direction, and he wasn't as interested in that, so he left. So that's my guess for how it all went down. But I suspect you'll still get some of those horror elements. Maybe not as much as they were going to be originally, but I think there are still going to be scary elements of that film because it is still the multiverse of madness. And Wanda Maximoff, the Scarlet Witch, is a very scary person to go up against. As they even say in this very show, as as Monica and Jimmy Woo were talking, it seemed like in Endgame she could have ripped Thanos in half if she wanted to. I mean, she was in the process of doing so.
Yeah, like she's by far the most powerful character that the MCU has right now. And like,
oh yeah,
she could have gone toe to toe. She was going toe to toe with Thanos, and she didn't even know what she was doing. She didn't know the full extent of her powers.
Exactly. I mean, it was Thanos literally had to obliterate the battlefield, including many of his own forces, just to stop her. Because if not, she would have just ripped them in half, and that would have been the end of that.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, that's a very scary person to have to fight. And I'm very excited to see her as an antagonist. I think she's going to be the primary antagonist, and I think there will still be scary elements of it. Also, don't forget, she can give you visions and she can give you nightmares, as we saw in Age of Ultron. So you might even get a little bit of that nightmare influence there as well. So,
which is interesting because, originally the way her powers had been set up was that they came from the Mind Stone, and that's why she was able to give visions to people and kind of mind control them. But now it turns out that she always had powers. Like she was putting the probability hex on the bomb so it wouldn't go off. And then the Mind Stone just amplified them?
I think so, yeah.
How do you feel about that kind of retcon for powers? Because I don't know if I'm a fan.
I think that by explaining it in that way, I think what Marvel did in explaining it that way, they were leaving themselves essentially a backdoor into mutants already exist in the MCU. I think the implication of what they were saying there is that Wanda might have already been a mutant, but a very low level one. And as you said, the Mind Stone just amplified what was already there.
Yeah.
And so I don't really mind the explanation because that would be a very convenient way for Marvel to start to introduce more mutants into the MCU now that they have the whole X-Men world to play with. So I don't mind it. I can see why people would say that might be a little convenient, but I think that the potential outweighs the convenience.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with you, but for me, it's like, having magic and having the X gene are two very different things because the X gene is literally, genetics and it's passed down and that would make sense if some people just had it and it wasn't until the snap in Endgame that that happened, or because the Infinity Stones were destroyed or whatever. But magic just feels different to me because in my mind that seems like it's just something that has to be learned, kind of the way Doctor Strange introduced it.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's necessarily true based on kind of the witches we saw in Salem. And there's no explanation for her mother being a witch or even having that lineage.
Yeah, and no, it's a very fair point, and I hope we'll get some more of that in Doctor Strange too. I hope we get a little bit more of that explanation because WandaVision definitely did leave some lingering questions, a lot of lingering questions, and one of those, just to touch on briefly, is the commercials. As we get these commercials throughout the series. They're kind of interspersed in the middle of each episode, and they each speak to a different trauma in Wanda's life, or a different, a different message towards Wanda that she needs to work through, essentially. And as we've recently learned, Kevin Feige has come out and said that those messages were originally supposed to be Doctor Strange communicating to Wanda, trying to reach out to her into the Hex. But of course, these messages, as they get to Wanda, they're turned into television commercials, because that's what the Hex does.
Yeah.
And I hope we get some mention or reference to that in Doctor Strange 2 as well. Some greater explanation of the Nexus being and all the other stuff we saw in the commercials, the Yo magic and all that stuff. Because I think that some of it was straightforward, like the Strucker watch or the Lagos paper towels. We know what those are because those are references to past events. But like the Nexus stuff, that I think we could use some more explanation on. So I'm looking forward to that. And so, yes.
Sorry, go ahead.
I don't know. I was just gonna to kind of put a bow on WandaVision. Incredible series. Absolutely loved it. Great way to kick off Phase 4. I think it's tremendous. And I just want to say this before we end. For me, everybody did a fantastic job in WandaVision. Wanda Maximoff, Vision, the Sword Agents, Jimmy Woo, the townspeople, everybody, Hayward, everybody did a great job. I don't think there was a bad performance in the bunch. Even the kids, Billy and Tommy were great in the series. Everybody did such a great job. But I do want to give my MVP award, if I may, of WandaVision to Catherine Hahn as Agatha Harkness, because she was so incredible in WandaVision. I mean, perfect casting, perfect execution of the role. I cannot wait to see more of her. I hope we see her in Doctor Strange 2, if not even before that. She was so much fun to be around as Agnes. She was great.
And watching the assembled and like seeing her in person, she seems just like super fun and happy to be here, and then transforming into this like, I don't know, it was just, I 100% agree. She did a fantastic job. It was just incredible how she was able to switch so well from, the fun sitcom friend to, a power hungry villain.
Oh yeah.
And like one of the creepiest scenes was, there's one moment, I guess it would have been like episode 5 or something, but it was when she was, when Billy and Tommy had just been born and they were sitting in the cradles.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Vision says something, and like, the whole scene kind of gets thrown off, and then she's like, do you want us to do that again? Let me walk back of the door and I'll redo my lines. And it was just like, whoa, that came out of nowhere, and it was so flawless.
Oh, it was fantastic. Yeah, so I just wanted to say that, that's definitely the new character I'm most excited to see back. Also, I doubt we'll see him again, but Norm from The Office, in Vision's office.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, the one who he frees briefly in episode 6, episode 5. Yes, episode 5. The one who says that, your grief is poisoning us, and or no, sorry, that's the other lady. Never mind, not him. But you know who I'm talking about, that guy.
Yeah.
He was, he just one of the townspeople. He was really cool. I liked him. He seemed like a nice guy. But so that was WandaVision. Any closing thoughts?
I just have kind of a hypothetical. I mean, the whole format of the show was, each episode, at least to start, each episode was, a decade sitcom. And of course, like, things got interrupted kind of around the 2010s era of Modern Family. What would have happened if nothing went wrong? Would she have just always stayed in the, original decades and not moved forward through time at all? Would she have just caught up to modern times and then stayed there indefinitely?
Good question. I mean, I guess we'll never know, but I think you could even say that maybe she would have just, once she reached modern day, she might have just looped back to the beginning and went back to the 50s, and we repeat the cycle. But yeah, it's really hard to say. It's a good question. Also, Agatha all along. That may be one of the bops 2021.
All along.
Incredible. Absolutely incredible. So yeah, 10 out of 10 for WandaVision from me. What do you think?
I mean, it's hard to give a 10 out of 10, but darn if it's not close. It was really good.
Yeah, I mean, I may come back and revise that as we get more Disney Plus series, but certainly
it gets a really good out of 10 for me.
Yeah. I may come back to revise it, but I don't think I will. WandaVision really was a triumph. And so with that, let's go to The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, which came out a couple weeks later. Only ran for 6 episodes, not 9.
A lot more grounded.
Yeah, a lot more grounded.
It's very much like the Captain America movies.
Yeah,
or at least,
very much.
Winter Soldier.
Yeah, a lot of the Winter Soldier DNA. Um, I don't think that we have to go through a whole plot summary. But I really liked Falcon and the Winter Soldier. I think it was definitely a lot more conventional to what we know from Marvel. I thought it was really good, really well put together. There were some elements of it I wasn't crazy about. But ultimately, the show served its purpose. The show was essentially it exists to get us from a point where Sam Wilson is Falcon, the Falcon, to being, his own version of Captain America, and also it gives some really great character development to Bucky as the Winter Soldier.
Yeah.
And it was just essentially it was a vehicle to show us where they've been and what they've been doing. And I think on that score, it worked. I don't know that it said as much as I think it wanted to say, but it did do a good job overall.
Yeah, I mean the original kind of outline for the show, there were a lot of plot lines that had to be cut, and that's why, it's pushed back for reshoots.
Mm,
Apparently there's going to be a whole side plot about I don't know if it was the Flag Smashers were going to unleash some kind of virus on the population, but there was something with a virus. And all of a
yeah,
sudden, like the coronavirus hit, and we all got sent into this pandemic lockdown, and they're like, maybe we should cut that out of the show because it hits a
yeah,
little too close to home, which I think was the right call. Um, it would have been a little interesting to see that because, obviously the MCU is supposed to take place in this, like, our universe, basically, but
yeah.
um, I don't know. I think they made the right call, but yeah, it definitely felt like there was something missing.
Yeah, yeah. I understand why they cut the virus plot. I can understand why a company like Disney, which tends to be, conservative when it comes to, topical things. They tend not to they try not to be topical. And they hold back on that stuff. I can see why they did it. But my issue is they didn't really replace it with
With
anything.
anything. Yeah.
You know, the Flag Smashers, and so here's my big issue with the Falcon and Winter Soldier is the villains. I thought that the Flag Smashers were pretty incoherent from an ideological perspective. I understand the idea of the Flag Smashers. They are people that essentially moved from wherever they were to places where they had more opportunities, in the 5 years between the snap and the blip. And now they've been displaced as everyone's come back, and they're essentially being repatriated back to wherever they came from.
Yeah.
Um, and they're in these repatriation camps, and there's a lot of inequality and poverty and all of that. Which, sure, I mean, I get that, but um, I don't understand. I mean, it's the way they were kind of shown to us throughout the series. It was almost like like Anonymous and that kind of group and that kind of thing. It was almost a little bit more like that, which I don't know. I mean, it felt like they didn't quite gel. It didn't felt very coherent to me. But maybe you got a better read of it.
Uh, no.
Mm,
I pretty much agree. I mean, the way to think about it is that they are an extremist group.
exactly.
So, obviously they're going to push their ideology a little too far and, enforce it with violence.
Mm,
Um, but yeah, it's kind of one of those things. It's like, Thanos's logic was good enough.
mm,
People will ask like, why didn't he just double all the resources? And you don't have a good answer for that, but
right.
um, yeah, my biggest gripe about the Flag Smashers is that they had that one scene in the beginning where, they had the app on the phone and they called for a bunch of random civilians to come out and kind of pretend to be part of this organization
Hmm.
and riot. So amidst the chaos, the Flag Smashers could kind of skedaddle. I
Yeah.
would have loved to see more of that. and more of like, these random people being called upon to engage in criminal activity kind of anonymously.
Yeah.
I don't know how you would have justified that, but doing something like if you remember in Westworld season 3, there was I forget what the app was called, but it was basically like, opportunities to do
exactly
crime.
Criminal jobs.
Yeah.
It was like a hacktivist kind of thing, if you've heard of that term. And yeah, no, it was all a little bit uneven with the Flag Smashers. And I really liked let's see, what was her name? The actress for Carly, Morgenthau. I forget her name, but
she's
Erin
really
Kellyman.
good though.
Yeah,
she's put in a lot of like similar roles. She pulls it off really well.
Yeah,
the kind of unassuming villain.
Exactly. Yeah, she's Erin Kellyman is the actress's name. She did a great job, and I liked her acting. But again, the character went off the rails. I mean, I understand that her group is very displeased with the status quo, but it's hard to see how kidnapping people and blowing up buildings is exactly going to win hearts and minds over to your cause. As you said, I mean, she's an extremist, but it's also just not a very smart thing to do. And her character was definitely, I think, was made out to be a more cunning character than the things that she chooses to do. But
I wonder if that's kind of a symptom of the re-edits and reshoots. I mean, there's no way for us to know, but
yeah.
I mean, in terms of ideology, obviously that's kind of set in stone, but like the way, kind of the action set pieces and the way they commit their acts, I don't know if they would have made more sense in the original edit.
Yeah, I think it probably would have been better, because if you had the virus storyline, it would have made more sense why they would even resort to violence to get things like, as we saw in episode 2, with vaccines and other medicines and food and supplies, because the alternative to not having those things is certain death. Yeah. So that would have made more sense. I mean, obviously poverty is very bad, and that's another very real thing that exists, but we never really saw these displacement camps. We never really saw the depths of the desperation. We saw Mama Donia die of tuberculosis, but in the real world, we actually do have treatments for tuberculosis, that you don't have to kill anybody to get. So, it's, it all felt a little bit weak. I think it would have been better with the virus storyline. That would have made it a little bit clearer as to why the Flag Smashers resort to the ends they resort to. I can still kind of see how they got to where they were with what we got in the show, but it just kind of felt incomplete. But that's the Flag Smashers. That's kind of the weaker element of the show. Let's talk about what was good about the show, because there was a lot that was good about it. Namely, the dynamic between Sam and Bucky. Those two,
the reluctant friends. That therapy scene where they're like staring into each other's eyes. Their whole dynamic for the whole show was so good.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's like it was like the buddy cop thing essentially, and you have Anthony Mackie and Sebastian Stan. Those two just have such great chemistry together, and it was just such a joy. Have you seen
them in interviews?
Oh yeah,
together. Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's fantastic.
It was like that, but a TV show.
Exactly, and it was great. All of the stuff with the two of them together, just going back and forth and bantering and bickering. It was great. That was really fantastic, and I like how so we kind of have twin character arcs for the two of them. You have Sam Wilson. He's got the shield after Endgame, and he's very conflicted. He has it, but he doesn't feel like it belongs to him. So he turns it over to the government for the Smithsonian. And of course, the government goes behind his back and gives it to this other guy John Walker to be their new stand-in for Captain America. He's going to be the new Captain America.
Blonde-haired, blue-eyed Captain America. Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, he checks all the boxes, and he seems to be, on paper, he seems to be the most qualified possible person. But as we know, simply being a good soldier does not make you a good Captain America. Steve Rogers wasn't the Captain America he was just because he was a good soldier. He did it.
He was a good person.
He was a good person on top of being a good soldier, and often being a good person trounced the instincts of being a good soldier. And so John Walker doesn't have. And so over the course of the series, and we'll get to John Walker, but over the course of the series, we go from a Sam that feels like the shield doesn't belong to him to a point where he's posed a very real question by oh dear, what's his name? Isaiah Bradley.
Yes.
Yeah, the black Captain America from like the 40s and 50s. To a point where would a black man even want to be Captain America? I mean, do those ideas even really gel?
Would you?
Would I personally?
Yeah.
Well, that's quite a job.
It's a hard question. It's a tough question.
I mean, I wouldn't turn it down for ideological reasons. I would turn it down for workload reasons. I think that's probably why I would turn it down.
I'm not a super soldier.
Exactly.
I can't even throw a frisbee.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I don't know how I would be with the shield, but it's a very fair question, and especially when you look at where Isaiah Bradley is coming from. I mean, the way he was treated, when he essentially, he got the super soldier serum, and he was a soldier just like Steve was, and he tried to save his platoon just like Steve did, but instead of being hailed as a hero and lionized, he was thrown in prison for decades.
Yeah.
You can see why he would believe that, quite frankly, why would a black man want to be a Captain America in a country that has treated black men and black women like dirt for so long? And so then Sam starts to contemplate that, and his character ultimately ends up in a place where he does become Captain America, but he's not a facsimile of Steve Rogers. He's his own man. Yeah. And I think that's a really great arc. He demonstrates that it's possible to be Captain America while also understanding that being Captain America is not, you have to accept the, how do I put this? It's not an endorsement of everything America stands for. It's an endorsement of striving to represent the best of what America stands for. That's what
the hope that America could do better.
Exactly. That's what Sam possesses that John Walker didn't possess.
Yeah.
And that's what's going to make Sam a better Captain America without the super soldier serum than John Walker ever would have been with it. So that was Sam's arc. I thought that was a really well done arc. And I think it was even better for Bucky, because Bucky's coming from a place where this is a guy who has been fighting virtually nonstop for decades. He was a soldier in World War II, brainwashed by Hydra, the world's most lethal assassin for decades. He just got out of Winter Soldier, and then he was fighting in Civil War. He got a brief break in Wakanda in between Civil War and Infinity War, and then he's fighting again in Infinity War, and he's fighting again in Endgame. He's just been fighting for decades, and the guy just wants a break. He doesn't want to be the Winter Soldier anymore. He wants to live a little. And we see him, he has his notebook, all the people that he wants to make amends with, all the people who, the remaining loved ones of people that he killed as the Winter Soldier, and even a few remaining Hydra operatives that he neutralizes. He has left to neutralize as he on his quest to dismantle that organization. And we go from a place where he's really, you know, he's still kind of coming out of that tortured existence as the Winter Soldier. We see him having those nightmares of that that young man he killed years ago, and he's befriended this Japanese man, Mr. Tanaka, I think it was, and this older guy, and who and he has lunch with him, he hangs out with him because he wants to be nice to him, but he can't bring himself to tell him that he killed his son as the Winter Soldier. And he just is grappling with this. He's going to therapy, and and throughout the series we see him. Not only does he get some solace from his prior existence as the Winter Soldier, but he gets to he's finally fighting for himself, I guess, in a certain sense. He's fighting of his own accord. It's not because he's been brainwashed by Hydra. It's not because the fate of the world is on the line. He's doing it because he genuinely wants to. He may not exactly love Sam at first, and he's annoyed that he gave up the shield, but ultimately he's doing this because he believes it's the right thing to do. And I think that was really great. It was just as this was Sam's journey to become Captain America, this was Bucky's journey getting away from being the Winter Soldier, which is why I think it was kind of a missed opportunity, because by the end of the show, he finally tells the older guy that, the truth about him killing his son. And we get that final title card of, Captain America and the Winter Soldier, where it was obviously the Falcon and the Winter Soldier the whole time. I thought it should have been Captain America and Bucky Barnes, because Sam is now Captain America, but
or like
no longer
Captain
the Winter
America
Soldier.
and the White Wolf or something like that.
Or the White Wolf or something like that, But oh well, I guess at this point it's really more of a title than a persona at this point.
Yeah.
But I thought those were really great character arcs. That's what I appreciated most about the show. We got some more just about, like, again, just Avengers living normal lives. We saw Wanda Maximoff just driving a normal car from where was Sword headquartered? Like, I think it was like Texas or Louisiana. Oh no, it was Florida, I think.
I have no idea.
I think it may have been Florida. I forget, but it was somewhere down south to New Jersey. And in this case, we see Sam. We see him with his family. His sister, his nephews. They have a boat. The family finances are in a bad place. They go to the bank to get a loan. And he wants to get this loan from the bank, not because he's an Avenger. He wants to get it because he's got a whole business plan, and he's got and because his credit is in order, and normal people stuff. He doesn't want to just be an Avenger. He's also his own person, and I hope, but I think we're going to get a lot more of that through these Disney Plus shows. It's just Avengers being normal people, because ultimately that's what they are. And so they have this boat. By the end of the show, throughout the show, there's this constant back and forth. The cost of fixing up the boat. The sister wants to sell the boat. Sam wants to keep the boat. They end up renovating the boat. And so I just really liked those arcs for those characters. I thought they were really good. But let's talk about some of the other people on the show, shall we? Oh, first, I want to give you an opportunity to cap us off on Sam and Bucky.
I mean, I think you summarized it all really well. I mean, I appreciate there were some times where, Bucky would pick up the shield, especially in that last fight, where it was the two of them against John Walker.
Yeah.
And, they were kind of trading the shield, which, kind of harkens back to the end of Civil War, whereas, Bucky and Steve Rogers trading the shield. And, I think a lot of people wanted Bucky Barnes to be the next Captain America. I think part of Bucky maybe even wanted to be. Um, and it's but not only is he moving away from being the Winter Soldier, but he's also moving away from being Captain America.
Hmm.
And he's kind of learning to let Sam be his own Captain America, because he was really against John Walker
Hmm.
strictly because he wasn't Steve Rogers.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, so I thought that was kind of interesting because Bucky kind of had those two movements.
Yeah.
Um,
And and speaking of John Walker, I mean, he was, I think, definitely a breakout character from this show. I've heard him compared to like Homelander from The Boys, and
yeah,
also Omni Man, I think his name is from the
yes,
Invincible series.
I'd say
Someone
he's
in that
he's
mold.
he's closer to the guy from The Boys. I just blanked on
Homelander.
that name. Homelander.
Mhm.
Yes, you just said it. That was weird. He's a lot closer to Homelander than Omni-Man because Omni-Man is like a dad.
Mm.
But it's really interesting because in the first few episodes, I was seeing John Walker, and I was like, my impression was, I knew, you know, down the road he was going to end up kind of bastardizing the name of Captain America and doing
Mhm.
a not so good job. But when he started out, he kind of seemed like a little cinnamon bun doing his
Sympathetic.
best. He seemed like
Yeah,
he was just trying to be the best Captain America that he could be. And like,
exactly.
you know, he got, I don't know. I mean, he obviously, went down the wrong path, and we talked about, he was a good soldier, but maybe not necessarily a good person. I think
Mm.
he was still a good person, or he started out as that. Um,
Yeah.
I think it was just the pressure of being Captain America and living up to the ideals of Steve Rogers was too much for him.
Oh
And
yeah.
that's why he inevitably broke.
Mm. Definitely. I think that much like Bucky himself in the show, a lot of people, when they were watching those first few episodes of Falcon Winter Soldier, they just were instinctually disliked John Walker because he wasn't Steve Rogers. And I hope that a lot of those people, and I see them on Twitter and other places, and I know that I'm sure many of them have come around to this idea, but I wish that all of them would because it was so intentional that folks, John Walker isn't supposed to be Steve Rogers.
Yeah.
He's not supposed to be this purely likable person. When he got the shield in the show, that wasn't Marvel saying this is really going to be the new Captain America. And I know that not everyone is, comic book movie obsessives and comic book obsessives, so they may not know about US agents and all that. You know, but you don't have to know that to understand that they're setting up this person to be someone who, as you said, he's not an evil person. He's a good person who's conflicted and overwhelmed by the responsibilities that
Yeah.
he's been entrusted with. And because he's so overwhelmed, he becomes brash, he becomes impulsive, and
Takes
that
the
leads
serum,
to he takes the serum, and that
which
leads to disastrous consequences.
yeah.
Um, and so he's
Also,
not supposed to be Steve Rogers. He's supposed to be John Walker.
I find it so funny how much hate Wyatt Russell got
Mm.
just because he played John Walker. And it's like,
Yeah.
you have to understand that the actor and the character are two
Um,
separate people.
yeah, they're not the
So like people
same
were
person.
tweeting at him, they're like, "How dare
Yeah,
you?"
it's so silly. I mean, yeah, they're attacking the actor for a character that they personally don't like. I yeah, that's just total silliness to me. But yeah, I mean, I really liked John Walker. I know people, it was a little bit silly, even after he has the shield takes away, he makes his own shield just in his garage and shows up to the
Yeah,
fight in the finale.
that did nothing. Like
Yeah,
him
no, it
showing up
was,
still in his suit and like, ready to fight. Yeah, okay, like that makes sense. He's not ready to give up the mantle. But, there's only one scene where he uses his homemade shield and he like throws it at a person. it misses, hits a wall, and just falls to the ground, and then you don't see it again
Yeah,
for the rest of the episode.
useless.
And it's
Completely
just like,
useless.
okay, why was that the post-credit scene? Do something with Val. Like, who the hell is Val? Julia
Exactly.
Louis-Dreyfus, why were you only in like 3 minutes of this whole series?
Yeah. So let's talk about this because I I loved the Val reveal in this just as much as I loved the Quicksilver reveal in the last one. Um, I I, like, I know that there is no star too big for the MCU. The MCU
Wait.
gets everybody eventually.
I need to ask first, do you know who Val is? Like the character from
Um,
the comics?
she is. I've heard a little bit. She is. Um,
She's like
uh,
an
she's
agent for
yeah. She's like a
Shield or
shield.
sort of something, but
Yeah,
like
she's a shield agent, and I think she is associated with Hydra for some time. I'm not
yeah.
super familiar with her, but
Isn't she kind of a double agent? I don't know. Did you know about her before watching the show
no,
though?
no, I didn't know about her before.
Okay, so you
Um,
you walked into this I can't even call it a cameo because she's probably gonna be a main character, but you
yeah,
saw Dreyfus and were like, I'm 100% on board.
oh, completely. Because as I was saying, I mean, the MCU gets everybody in Hollywood eventually, but I was not expecting to see Julia Louis-Dreyfus show up just then. But I was thrilled when she did because I mean, that is just she is such an unbelievable talent. And I mean, I'm thrilled that she's now playing this mysterious, powerful person in the MCU. We don't know if she's affiliated with the government. Seems like she might be, or she might be affiliated with maybe Hydra remnants, or we don't know. And I think that's really cool. She plays the character with a very kind of cocky, assured demeanor. You know what she reminds me of? She reminds me of the Adjudicator from John Wick Chapter 3, if you remember her. Do you remember that character?
Mm, I think she's. I mean, obviously she's uh, Julia Louis-Dreyfus, so she's.
Mm.
I was gonna say a mix of that and Veep, because she
Yeah.
does she does bring over that humor from Veep. Not
Oh, yeah.
100%, obviously, because this is a more serious role, but that kind of I like that cocky attitude.
Oh, yeah. No, totally. I think that's exactly what it is. It's a mixture of John Wick 3's The Adjudicator and Selena Meyer from Veep,
Yeah.
which is a combination. I mean, who knows that those two things, whatever you put together, but I'm so glad they did. Because I love both of those things. And so yeah, I'm very excited to see what we do with Valentina Allegra de Fontaine, uh, just Val for short. And also we have to talk about Zemo and Sharon Carter, who both returned from Civil War. Um,
Yeah.
Zemo, I mean, it's always great to see Zemo. I love Civil War Zemo. I'm thrilled that he's back.
Did you see
Maybe
the
a little
Zemo cut?
underused here. Oh yeah, the Zemo dance in
Yeah.
Madripoor. Yeah, that was great. I love that. Zemo is a great villain. I mean, definitely in that pantheon of great MCU villains as far as I'm concerned. I mean, he's the
Yeah.
only. You realize there's only two people in the entire MCU that have ever defeated the Avengers. Thanos and Zemo. It's kind of incredible to think about. But Zemo did it. I mean, he defeated the Avengers by turning them against themselves. And he's also very, he's cocky, but he's cool. He always has a plan. He's very self-assured. And it was great to see him back here. It was all the Madripoor stuff was great. Just
Yeah.
seeing Zemo playing both sides and his machinations was great. Um, Maybe a little underused by the end of the series. He started in prison, and by the end, he's back in prison. Just it's like we're putting him back in a box till we need him again later. But it's always great to see him. And
Yeah, and it's not only that, but he was handed over back to the Wakandans.
mhm.
So it's not even like he's in regular prison, which, if he did end up there, then we could have had him included in, the Thunderbolts, which was like the kind of Suicide Squad led by
Thunderbolt
Thaddeus
Ross.
Ross.
Yeah.
Because I think in the comics, Baron Zemo was involved with that, if not the leader of that. And I think U.S. Agent also was.
Yeah, U.S. Agent is also a member of the Thunderbolts.
Yeah, but if Baron Zemo is off with the Wakandans, I don't know how that's going to play out. But It's
Yeah.
also funny because in Civil War, a lot of people, some people thought he was a really good villain. Some people thought he wasn't, and that his
Mm.
plan was kind of like overly complicated and stupid.
Mm.
But I think seeing him again here kind of shed some new light on his character and makes him feel a little bit more real,
Oh
uh,
yeah.
and a little bit more justified, I'd say.
Oh, totally, totally. And so it was great to see him again. I love the Dora Milaje pop up, just as you were
Oh
saying.
yes.
Yeah, that was a really cool reveal. It's always great to see them. Um, and of course we have Sharon Carter back. It was nice to see Sharon Carter again. I don't think I don't know that she was a character that everyone was clamoring to come back, but I'm glad she was back.
How do you
Um,
feel
you know,
about her being the spoiler alert power broker?
yeah, I mean, I don't know. That reveal felt a little weak, you know. I mean, it's fine. I'm sure they'll do interesting things with it in the future, but eh, you know, yeah, I don't feel strongly about it either way. It seems to me that, I mean, there are a few plot holes with Sharon Carter being the power broker, chiefly being, well, number one, if she wants to continue to conceal who she is, being the power broker, why doesn't she just, agree with Sam and Bucky's plan from the outset instead of, being so, so down on patriotism and being so cynical and all that? If she wants to conceal it, she's the power broker. Presumably, she would want to play along, but not play
Yeah.
along so much that to the point where she brings noted murderer Baron Zemo to her scientist these super soldier serums, where, spoiler alert, Baron Zemo, who hates superpowered people, killed the scientist who can make people have superpowers.
Yeah,
um,
she brought him there and then defended them from all these bad guys running in.
yeah.
Like, what was her plan?
Presumably the power broker would want her scientist to continue to produce the serum so she could broker more powers and
Yeah.
not bring Baron Zemo, who will definitely murder this person, directly to him. So there were some plot holes with that, but it's fine. I can see that. I mean, it's interesting because they're doing the kind of like the reverse Agent Carter thing, where now she's on the inside, but she's a bad guy. She's a sinister force. So it's interesting. I can't say I loved it, but at the end of the series, somebody had to be the power broker. So
Yeah. Well, not necessarily. Like they could have left that an open plot thread.
that's true.
Because I'd love to see the return of Madripoor as a
Oh
setting. That
yeah,
was really cool, and I wish the show had taken a little bit more time to flesh that out a little bit.
no,
Um,
totally.
but I think Sharon Carter could have been very well justified if they had set her up properly in um, Winter Soldier,
Mm.
because there was a theory
Civil
going
War.
around. Uh,
We first meet her in Civil War.
we first meet her in Civil War.
I think so. She wasn't in Winter Soldier, was she?
Well, Winter Soldier was the one that introduced Sam, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought she. No, it was. You're right. It was Civil War.
Mm.
Yeah, if they had set her up better in Civil War, there was a theory going around that she was actually involved with. I don't know if it would have been Hydra or just she was kind of a double agent, or she was working for Zemo,
Hmm.
um, and stealing the shield and the jetpack to get, or the wing pack to get back to Steve and Sam,
Mm.
um, so they could continue that fight following Baron's plan, and kind of setting her up as a villain
Mm.
would have better justified her being the power broker now,
Yeah.
and having all this stuff going on in Madripoor. It might also be interesting to get like a movie or a miniseries exploring her time since then, just because we have no information on how she got to be the power broker. But
yeah,
I don't know. It is what it is.
I hope we get a lot more from Sharon in. I'm guessing Secret Invasion will probably be the next time we see her, or I don't know. This is some other time in the near future. Yeah, no, I would like to get more context for her and where she's been since we last saw her in Civil War. Yeah, it was fine. I'm more enthusiastic about where we're going with the character than where we left her in this series. But overall, just to kind of wrap things up, the bad was the villains. I think the Flag Smashers were definitely weak, but
yeah.
And you could also put the Power Broker reveal in that camp, but the good was really good. Sam and Bucky dynamic was great. John Walker was great. You know, that character did exactly what he was supposed to do. I think it might have been a little bit better if he didn't show up in the finale. You know, just have his story end with Val at the end of episode 5.
Yeah.
You know, where you could just cut to him being U.S. agent, and that's the last we see of him in this series. But still, for what we got, really good. I'm excited to see John Walker again as U.S. agent. And so that was good. Isaiah Bradley, I want to mention this just at the end here. I thought it's rare that I have a genuine heartwarming moment in a Marvel movie or show, but when Isaiah Bradley, when they went to the Smithsonian and there was that whole exhibit to his time as a soldier, you know, back in I don't know if it was the Korean War or World War II, but one of those, you know,
Korean War.
Yeah, the Korean War, and finally righting that wrong, you know, after having his record and his name erased for so long. I really did find that quite touching. You know, that was a really, really nice moment. And so Isaiah Bradley was great. John Walker was great. Sam and Bucky were great. And for me, that adds up to a series that was very good. I think it probably suffered because for reasons completely outside of its control. I think that it would have been better with the virus subplot, but it just so happened it was coming out as a very real pandemic was ravaging the world, and they didn't really replace it with anything that could fill that hole. But for what it is and for what it was, I would give it. It's tough. I would give it. I'm gonna say. I'm gonna say a 7 out of 10. I might revise it up to an 8 at a later date, but I'm gonna put it at a 7. Very good, not great, but very good.
Yeah, WandaVision was a really good out of 10. I'd give this a very good out of 10. For me, that's like an 8 out of 10.
Yeah, I would say it's right there in that 7, 8 range.
7 out of 10 for sure, but seeing Sam in the new Captain America suit with the new like white wings, and you know
that was really
scene
good.
where he holds the shield up and then wraps the wings around him. That bumped it up to an 8 for me.
Yeah,
that was so cool.
And also the fight we get between Sam and Bucky and John Walker in I think it was episode 5. That was a phenomenal fight. One of the best we've gotten so far in the MCU. Really fantastic. So
God, when they broke his arm and his scream. It
was great. And also, even though I didn't like the Flag Smashers, Erin Kellyman did a great job as Carly. So I want to shout her out as well. She did a very good job. For me, my MVP of the Falcon and the Winter Soldier, I don't know. It might be.
Who was Sam's kind of sidekick in the military?
Torres.
MVP is Torres for me.
Torres is pretty cool. He's probably going to be the new Falcon because he's got the wings now. I'm really eager to see. It would be Valentina, but we didn't see enough of Valentina. So I'm going to say John Walker. I'm very interested to see where we go with John Walker in the future, where he's going to pop up next. John Walker with an honorable mention for Bucky, because I really did like kind of Bucky's movement from the beginning to the ending. You know, he's finally found some peace from his time as the Winter Soldier. I really like that. So yeah, so
great show.
I sit to say, the MCU on Disney Plus is off to a very strong start, and I know I speak for both of us when I say very, very, very excited for Loki in June.
Yes.
That is going to be. We've gotten 2 trailers now, 2 full trailers, and a bunch of clips. Ooh, it's looking good. It's looking really good.
We had the experiment. They started off experimental with the WandaVision, and then they gave us a little bit of a break and a little more grounded with Falcon and the Winter Soldier, or Captain America and the Winter Soldier, I should say. And now they're gonna go back to experimental, and I'm so excited. It's gonna be amazing.
Yeah, it's gonna be, balls to the wall, action, comedy, time travel. Oh my God, Owen Wilson.
Yeah, when those episodes come out, we'll do episodes.
Oh yeah.
Of the podcast, and
yeah, can't wait.
Exciting stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a very exciting time to be a Marvel fan. So, yeah, great job, WandaVision and the Falcon and the Winter Soldier, and yeah, here we come, Loki.
Yeah, this is pretty much all the time we have. But thank you for listening, and we'll talk to you next time.
Absolutely. Take care, everybody.
Bye.